Okay. Well, we're ready to go whenever you are. Just
All right. I hit record. Take it away.
hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Shirley Talk. I'm Mike Mulready.
I'm Kelly Duckworth.
And Kelly, we usually do this before we introduce our guests. Are you a doctor of any sort?
No,
Um,
not a nurse practitioner.
That was a good one. I came up with that one earlier. Nurse practitioner, attorney.
Nope.
All right, tax
Accountant.
person.
No.
No, yeah, I
Definitely
hate
not
numbers.
that.
It's not fun when Wendy says we got to fill out a form. I'm like, do we really have to? But no. So anyway, we point that out because if you hear us say something today or in any episode, get legal advice, get professional advice, because we're not really professionals of much of anything, really.
We're entertainers.
I guess you could call it
We're
that.
kind of funny sometimes.
Yeah, I try. And the jokes don't always land, but we try. So, well, today we have a special guest, Miss Carrie. I was gonna look it up. It's Carrie Schmidt, right?
Yes,
You
that's
got
me.
Carrie Chick Schmidt. So I wasn't sure if it was Carrie Chick or Carrie Schmidt or just all three. So today we have you, and you're in Missouri, St. Louis. Is that correct?
I am in St. Louis, Missouri.
So you founded an organization, and we connected via a mutual friend, Dion, and his son's battle with cancer. So that's how we connected. But you have an organization called Love Like Jackson.
Yes.
And I talked to you briefly about this about 2 weeks ago, but it looks like an amazing organization. So I know the answer to this question, but why in the world did you create an organization that, first of all, who's Jackson?
Yes. So Jackson is my son. I have two boys. Jackson is, he is forever 7. He died in 2019. And our other son, Ivan, was 3.5 at the time, but he just celebrated his 6th birthday on Monday. Jackson was a very healthy, active boy. In May of 2019, he started to have some leg pains. And so we took him to the doctor, had some x-rays, blood work. Nobody was really making a big deal about what was going on. I knew something wasn't right. At the time, I was also a surrogate. I was carrying a baby for a couple that I did not previously know.
Wow.
And the pregnancy was going great. It was a beautiful, beautiful situation. It was something that I had always felt very called to do. And so I just had a dream scenario. And then when Jackson's leg started hurting, I really started kind of looking into, well, maybe it was a torn meniscus. Maybe it's growing pains, because it's kind of sort of what they made it seem like. And so on July 8th, I delivered a healthy baby boy for the family that was from Chicago. And a couple of days later, my husband kind of got a stomach bug. Uh, and then a couple of days later, Jackson sort of showed up with what we thought was the same stomach bug, headache, stomach ache. But he just wasn't quite rallying the same way that my husband did. And so I was taking him to the hospital because I thought he was dehydrated, which turned into finding out that he had a 9-inch tumor in his femur, a flap on his mitral valve, which we did not know at the time if that was from the cancer or if that was something separate. But the flap on his mitral valve was releasing clots. And at that time, he had had 3 strokes on 6 days after I had delivered the baby.
How old was he at this point?
He was 7.
Oh, I thought you said he passed when he was 7. So
Yes, he did, because he died 6 days after he was admitted to the hospital.
Oh my God.
okay, yeah, it was
Yeah.
quick. Okay,
Yeah, and the whole time that we were there, we were just being fire hosed with information. It was very upsetting that it was not taken more seriously. A lot of times with kids, they think it is growing pains. And most of the times doctors don't really jump to cancer, as you almost have to press for them to even kind of acknowledge it, because, it's rare. Which I will agree that it is not common, but it is not rare.
I was going to say, I would argue that too.
Yes. I'm in the childhood cancer community. I had actually been raising funds and awareness for St. Baldrick's since 2015. because I couldn't imagine having a child with cancer. And I shaved my head 3 times, and then Jackson shaved his head in March 2019, 4 months before cancer took him from us.
So just real quick, I'm looking at your profile picture. So this is Jackson in the picture, right?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. Well, which one
Oh.
is it?
Just
That
your main
actually,
profile.
Ivan. Yeah, that
Okay.
one's Ivan in the picture. Yes.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yes. So I'm sorry. I wanted to give you a little background before I shared
No,
with
you're
you
fine.
what Love Like Jackson is.
Mm-hmm.
So after Jackson died, it was so shocking. It was so fast. And Ivan was experiencing debilitating anxiety. He was terrified that something was going to happen to me and Mike because, well, his brother was there and then he wasn't there. And
So let's back up real quick. I don't want to
yes,
interrupt you. So
that's okay.
so so a 9-inch tumor. Could you see it through his skin like a bump?
Um, by the time we got to the hospital, it was like his leg was hard. And we knew that something wasn't right, but we didn't know it was that, because it was being blown off like it was really not that big of a deal. And since then, I've learned that osteosarcoma can grow 800% in 30 days when it's not treated.
Yeah, so when I talked to you a couple weeks ago, I obviously didn't pick up on the fact that he died in that short amount of time.
Yes.
Did it spread to his bones, I guess, at that point? I mean, what was the reasoning by there wasn't nothing they could do? Was it just too far along, I guess?
Well, the tumor itself, they probably could have most likely either done like a bone sparing surgery, limb sparing surgery, or removed his leg. But because of the strokes, he had pretty massive strokes by the time we got there, and then he had a total of 6 strokes during that time. And um, it's sort of graphic, and it's when I talk about it to this degree, it's pretty upsetting because his brain had swollen so much from the strokes that there was no, like, they were trying to drain the fluid off, and they couldn't. It just like had nowhere to go.
Yeah.
They really couldn't even like remove a part of his skull to give the brain more space. So what happened was his brain herniated, which means it swelled out of the cavity, and once that happens, there's nothing that can be done. And so we were told at 3 o'clock on Saturday morning, and 12 hours later he was gone.
I just can't. I just can't wrap my head around that. Having 3 kids of my own, and you about to be a
I'm
mom.
about to cry.
I just so he
It's
was
one of those
perfectly
stories.
healthy up to that point.
Yeah,
and
he
really
was.
didn't, and
Yeah,
you know, most
barely had to go to the doctor. um it just, like, with childhood cancer, it's kind of just like a genetic snafu, you know what I mean? It's like one gene goes crazy and then just like multiplies, because childhood cancer is different than adult cancer. A lot of times adult cancer can be more like environmental, or you smoke cigarettes, or
something we've done to ourselves.
right, where
Yeah.
with childhood cancer, it's just not the same. And that's kind of part of the frustrating part, is that there have been so few drugs made specifically for childhood cancer. There's only been 4 in the last 30 years that are specifically for childhood cancer. So they end up having to treat children's cancer with adult medications, and their growing bodies can't take it. I mean, they die from the treatment so many times. So I'll always wish that Jackson had a chance to fight, but that is the reason why I fight.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. It really is. We did a previous episode, and I really got aggravated about some stuff. But one of the things I get really frustrated at is, and I don't care where you stand politically, I'm picking on all of them. Until a politician stands up and starts trying to help push this, I don't know that anything's really going to get done. You know, we can fund so many things. Why aren't we throwing more money at cancer, and especially childhood cancer? I just don't get it. It
Yeah.
makes absolutely no sense to me to watch a kid pass, and still not fund it the way it needs to be funded.
Right.
It just doesn't
Well,
make any sense.
yeah, and I mean, like, years ago, breast cancer didn't always have the best outcomes, but, because of the Susan G. Komen Foundation and all the money that they've raised in awareness, they now have like an 85% survival rate. And the survival rate for kids is not great. It's not.
And I don't know if there's any truth to this, but one of the reasons why breast cancer has been funded and been so successful is because it's breasts, and because they've made it sexy. They've made it,
Right.
they've really pushed it to where it's something that men want to get involved in. And I'm trying
Yeah.
to think of the way to say this, but
Right.
men want to get involved to save women's breasts, and how sexist and how ridiculous. And I'm glad they have.
Well,
However,
right.
it's been funded. It's been amazing. But
Yeah.
how can you make saving a kid sexy? How can you
Yeah.
make saving a child's life from cancer important enough? And it's not going to happen until somebody with some powers kid dies from cancer, and that's
Yeah.
when things will change.
Right.
It's
Right.
just heart
Yeah.
wrenching. It really is.
It's pretty sad to think that parents have to do things like have lemonade stands. Like, there's Alex's lemonade stand. They have to shave their head to raise awareness, to raise money for better research. Why should I have to do that? I already lost my son.
Yeah. But nobody's interested unless you make it sexy or make it gory or make it to where a point where people are going to pay attention. It's just
Right.
not right.
And I knew that Jackson's story was different. His story is not the typical story, and so I feel like I didn't really choose this path. I feel like this path chose me, to speak up about it and to raise awareness. And I take every opportunity I can to share, because people don't really know. And I believe childhood cancer is something that people can turn their heads away from.
So this is always my biggest question, because especially since you said you have another son, is this like a genetic thing? I mean, could this have been passed on to your younger son?
I definitely have seen situations where like I've seen a little girl with leukemia, and then her sister showed up with the same type of leukemia. It absolutely can be. What I have been told is that this type of cancer is not generally a genetic, it's not generally passed down, but sadly, my husband's family actually has tons of cancer in the family. Like they've done a lot of genetic studies and stuff, and nothing that they've discovered so far has shown up. And that's it's a terrifying thought for me, because I'm like, well, what if I found out that it was? Like, what am I going to do with that?
Yeah,
Because I can't stop it. I can't change it.
right.
So and I don't know, it's very hard to get doctors to listen to you about it. Because I'm sorry, but moms know.
Yep.
Moms know.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, especially with moms and kids, but we hear over and over and over, you have to be your own advocate. Doctors, I think they hear some of these same symptoms from people all the time, and they just brush it off. And they're not doing it to not make a big deal about it, but I just wonder sometimes they're immune to it. Oh, you've
Yeah.
got leg pain. You'll be all right. You're just having growing pains, blah, blah, blah. So
Right.
I don't know that they take it serious enough early enough. Obviously, they don't. So
And sadly, sometimes it's dictated by insurance.
it is,
Insurance may or
for
may not
sure.
want to cover blood draws or whatever. And I'm like, well, why can't we just, like, even if you check like blood yearly, you know what I mean? Like, and because he had blood levels that were off, and they
Yeah.
should have been more recognized. I really kept very quiet about it for a long time, because we had pursued litigation. But because of the flap on his mitral valve, they said that there was no way that they knew that he would survive anyway. You know what I
So
mean?
is the flap, was that a side effect from the cancer, or?
Yeah, it developed from the cancer being untreated.
All right, I
Oh,
got to ask, what's a mitral valve? I have no idea
Little
what
That's
flap
that
on
is.
your
that's
heart.
one of the valves in your heart.
Oh, okay.
So there's like your aortic valve, your
I
mitral
was
valve. I
thinking the
think there's a
flapper in
couple.
your throat. I thought
No.
we were heading towards throat cancer of some sort too. I wasn't sure what that
No,
was.
there was so much going on. It was so like confusing. And then, unfortunately we had to like meet for autopsy results. But it was like, we just needed some answers. We were like, what, how did this happen? They x-rayed his knee, his hip, and his pelvis, but they never x-rayed his femur. And that's where the tumor was.
Why would you not do that?
Your guess is as good as mine. I have to live with that for the rest of my life.
Oh
So
my gosh.
now if any of my friends, or people that I know, if their child's leg hurts, they take it seriously. And you
Yeah,
should.
and we hear these stories. First of all, how did you know what a micro valve was? I didn't
I
think
was
you
in
were a
nursing
doctor.
school I was a nursing student.
I didn't know that. See, you lied. You said you had no medical experience whatsoever.
I have a public health degree. I know something.
Sorry, I had to digress.
That's okay.
But I've got 3 kids, and anytime one of them has an ache or a pain, and you're probably this way with Ivan, but anytime they have an ache or pain, I listen to them and I look at them kind of funny, and I don't want to scare them, but over the next hour, I'm going in, checking on them. Does anything else hurt? Does this hurt?
Right.
Looking for bumps or stuff that might be, it makes you gun shy. Especially, I mean, you've got to have some PTSD over what happened with you, and we kind of talked about this on the phone that you do, but you've turned it into something that's hopefully going to help others.
Yeah, I definitely have PTSD, because that's only 2/3 of our story. My husband was grieving deeply and so sad. And of course, he had to go back to work 2 weeks after our son died, which is horrendous.
Yeah, that's
And
inhumane. It really is. It's
I mean,
inhumane.
it was terrible. And he couldn't concentrate. He was crying. He was so sad. He was broken. And he ended up with a blood infection and that traveled to that damaged his spleen, kidneys, heart, and lungs. And he had open heart surgery on June 11th of this year. And we fully believe it was a broken heart,
Stress.
literally
My
and figuratively.
gosh.
The stress and the grief. I mean, people don't talk about how severely grief affects you and your health.
Yep.
And yes, I absolutely have PTSD. And I have a background in social services. So, and the day after our son died, our pastor traveled from Oklahoma City and sat in our kitchen and said, I see parents who've lost children tend to go one of 2 ways. They shut down, they become angry and bitter, or they honor their child and they learn how to have joy and their grief at the same time. And as soon as he said that, it was like a switch went off for me. I said, that's what I'm going to do. And he had made a bucket list with Mike 6 months before he died. And one of the things that he said was he wanted to become a legend. And
Jackson did?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool.
It is so cool. And
he's got the name. Michael Jackson.
Exactly.
Gosh.
Exactly. Yeah. So, this isn't how we wanted it to happen, but his story has resonated and just really affected people differently than, some other situations. And so I felt like I had to do this. And like about, I guess it was 3 months after Jackson died, I woke up and felt with conviction that I needed to educate our community about childhood cancer and how under-researched it is and how underfunded it is. And so at that time, we decided to have a St. Baldrick's event in his memory, and we wanted to raise $10,000 so that we could specifically have the research money go to osteosarcoma. Because if you list the types of childhood cancer, osteosarcoma is very close to the bottom of cancers that get researched because it's rare, and it's not common, but nonetheless, it still needs to be researched.
I get that, but you know how many times somebody says the cancer I have is rare? We hear that all the time. So I'm just curious, what bubbles a cancer to the top of the list? Is it percentage of people die from it? Is it, but I hear that all the time. Oh,
I
it's rare.
know.
It's rare. I'm like, God, every one of them's rare.
You know,
uh,
a lot of times leukemia is ones that kids tend to survive more, and that's one of the more researched types of cancer.
okay.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm assuming that must be more common, but I will forever dispel the idea that childhood cancer is rare.
Yeah, I agree. I think this year alone, I've seen probably 5 or 6 kids pop up on social media that are fighting cancer.
And several that
Yeah.
didn't make it.
Oh,
I can name
several.
5 names right now of
I
kids
know.
that have recently passed
But I
this
mean,
year.
within the past 5 years, I probably
Right.
hadn't seen one a year. So I don't know
Right.
what's been going on lately, but I would argue it is not as rare as people make it out to be.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, so we decided to have the St. Baldrick's, and our goal was 10,000. And February 20th, 2020, 3 weeks before the world shut down, we had 73 people shave their head, and we raised $79,000.
Oh my gosh. I just got goosebumps.
That's unbelievable. How did you raise that kind of money?
We
Did you
had
find the
so many.
73 richest people in town and have them come in or what?
Well, I mean, honestly, if you think about it, 73 people, $79,000, like
Yeah.
about
That's-
1,000 a piece. I mean, we had one large donation, well, like a $10,000 donation. But it's such a conversation starter. It's people, like, what did we have? Like 20 or 30 women who shaved their heads. And I'm not saying it's not a big deal when a man shaves their head, but it's a big deal when a woman shaves her head.
It
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
is. It is. I've
Women
seen
are
it.
identified. Yeah, they're identified by their hair.
Yeah, most people don't know that, but that's absolutely
Yep.
true. We've had those discussions with people, and even women that ended up losing their life to cancer. The cancer wasn't the most mortifying thing it was to them. It was shaving their head.
Yep.
Right. And for me, it's a choice. I keep my hair short. It's just because I like to. But it's very different when it's a choice. And we had kids who shaved their head. We had one lady who donated 22 inches of hair, and it just, that day, a piece of my heart healed a tiny little bit. I'll
Yeah.
never heal from this. I will never get over it. I will never be the same. But being able to share Jackson's story, I will take every opportunity that comes my way to share his story, because it it just needs to be brought more to the light. And I mean, I didn't ask to be a part of this club of child loss. And I don't talk about it to make other people uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It's my story.
Yep.
I want to talk about my child just the same way as anybody else does.
Yep.
It's just my son's not here.
Yeah, we got to move mountains and to make changes. We have to make people become uncomfortable. So,
Yeah.
watching sick puppies on TV gets everybody to throw $19.99 into a pot for people this time of year because all you see is the dog commercials. How can we
Right.
get that? How can we get that same sympathy? And I just can't believe that hearing your story. Of course, you got to get it out there. It's got to be on the national news and get people to really be intrigued with losing a child. I
Right.
just can't believe that hasn't moved mountains so far, but I'm sure it is because you started an organization after all of this. So
Yes.
what's Love Like Jackson? What do y'all do?
Yes.
How do y'all do that?
So, like I said, Ivan had so much anxiety after Jackson died, and we were connected with a local organization here in St. Louis called Friends of Kids with Cancer, and they actually fully funded Ivan's play therapy. Um, and taking that financial barrier away made it so that we were able to take him to all the therapy that he needed. And really, in reality, a lot of people don't go to therapy because it's expensive, and they don't continue to go because it costs a lot of money. And we were financially obliterated after Jackson died. I mean, it was so unexpected. And for us to have come up with an extra $500 a month, I'm not sure how easy that would have been, but because it was funded, it made it so much easier. So I thought to myself, I think we need to give this gift to other people. So Love Like Jackson, we fund art, music, and play therapy. And we just added trauma informed yoga for kids. Um, because siblings are called the forgotten grievers, the attention really goes a lot towards the parents, and people think, well, kids are resilient; they'll be fine. The truth of the matter is that's not true. Not with a sibling loss.
No, they pay attention to everything, even the good stuff and the bad stuff. You know, you hear all the time, your kids are watching. Well, they are, 'cause my son does stuff that I do, and I don't realize I'm doing it. But
Right.
you know, even when my mom died, my son, he was probably 3 or 4, and he would wake up in the middle of the night sometimes screaming and crying, "I miss Mimo, I miss Mimo."
Oh,
But yeah,
it's
they're
terrible.
totally affected by it, and we think they're not paying attention, but they are.
Yeah.
I even saw everything that went down with Jackson, but
Hmm.
you know, he probably at the time wasn't really old enough to express what he was thinking.
No, they say statistics say that kids don't actually understand the permanence of death until they're 4.5.
Okay,
Just developmentally, they can't understand. It's like they
just
think
they're
maybe
gone.
they're going to come back. Right.
Yeah,
And it was like clockwork. When he was 4.5, it was all of a sudden like, oh, I guess my brother's not coming back. And, he would say, I miss Jackson. I mean, we talked about him all the time, probably to not an obsessive level, but we missed him so much. And one time we were crying, and he like hit me in the face. He said, Mom, I stop crying. I don't want to talk about Jackson. I'm like, I can't stop. I can't stop. I never hid that from him because I wanted him to see that you can't keep those emotions inside. And his therapist always says it's better out than in. So even though he says things sometimes that shoot my broken heart, uh I'm so happy that he feels comfortable enough to talk about it and share about it. And trust me, it's very painful to hear a very young child talk about death the way that he does. But sadly, he just learned something younger than a lot of other people do. And that's that sometimes kids die and people die. I mean, he just knows that, and other kids his age just have not really had that experience.
yeah, but it's definitely scarred him for life because I'm sure were they buddies? Did
Yeah.
Jackson take care of him and help him and play with him?
Jackson was actually very jealous of Ivan. As much as I would like to put Jackson up on the pedestal, as if he were perfect,
Well, I think
he
that's
was,
probably normal of older
yeah,
siblings. Yeah,
he was very normal. But Ivan idolized him.
yeah,
He looked up to him so much, and to see that, his big brother. Think about your own siblings and your kids and their sibling relationships. Those are like the most important relationships, and then adding a pandemic has just shown the light on the fact that he has had nobody to play with. And so play therapy has given him so many tools, and I had to surrender because I'm like, look, I don't know how to do this. I mean, I am grieving deeply. I don't know how to help a grieving child. And so through the therapy, it really gave him a release, because I can tell when his anxiety really gets out of hand, he'll start to have things pinging around in his head that he just cannot put to rest. And so that's when I call his therapist, and we she helps him work through that. And a lot of times he just has to process it, because I mean he's still only 6. I mean, he's in kindergarten.
yeah.
So we just know that that gift is priceless. It's about an average of about $100 an hour for therapy, and we fund 12 sessions. So for each child that we help is essentially $1,200. Um,
Is
but
that
to
normally like
me,
once a month? I've never been to therapy. I don't really know.
it depends on the child. I even really
Okay.
needed to go weekly
Okay.
in the beginning. And then we would try to bump it out to every 2 weeks. And sometimes we couldn't do that because his anxiety was really bad. We got it to where he was going about once a month. And right now, he goes just kind of whenever he needs a little bit of a tune up. So it's not as often now, but he loves his therapist. I mean, a kid's not going to sit on a couch and tell you about all their problems.
Right.
So playing doing the music therapy or art therapy is just such a better way for kids to express their feelings. And then the therapist can kind of guide them through you know, and do like scenarios, like hospital scenarios and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So
So you've talked about those things. So what's it look like? So Ivan goes to therapy, and the therapist starts working with him, and he's like, "Okay, Ivan, what's going on in your mind today? Can you draw a picture of it? Is it something like that, or what's?"
when we go into the room, we all sit together and talk, and we talk in front of him about how things are going, and if he has anything he wants to share. And then they go into the playroom, and she has everything set up kind of in sections. So a lot of times she just lets him play what he wants to, and it's very apparent to her, which I find totally amusing. Like if he's like playing with guys and they're smashing against each other, that might mean that he's angry, or you know what I mean? Like she can tell if there's something like glaringly obvious going on with him, or like so when my husband was in the hospital, Ivan's anxiety was very high, and so they were playing with like the toy hospital, and they would say, he'd say, well, my dad's in the hospital, and then she would say, well, but the doctors are going to help him. They're going to try to help him, so it's like sometimes those messages, they just go in so much better during play, because play is the language of children.
So the therapist sits back and watches him play and kind of sees
Yep.
how he's playing, how they think
Yep.
things he's thinking. I guess that's pretty
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, and he'll say stuff. She could ask him a question, or they'll sometimes they would do like an Easter egg hunt, and they would have like little pieces of paper on the inside, and then he would open it and say, and one of the questions was like, what's something you're afraid of? And doing it as like a fun activity really helps him to open up his mind and his emotions that way. It's absolutely beautiful to see. And I mean, I'm a huge proponent of therapy anyway. I would not be where I am today without therapy, because we also are in grief therapy ourselves and go to a support group. And for kids, a lot of kids are experiencing very serious anxiety right now, and play therapists are busier than they have ever been, like with everything that's going on, because I think our generations try to do better about acknowledging kids mental health, because I mean, like my parents generation, you just kind of didn't talk about stuff.
No, I got the "suck it up, boy, you'll be all right," or
So
"toughen
is
up."
Right.
is is Love Like Jackson only for siblings who have lost siblings, or is it just for any child that needs therapy for any reason?
I would love to be able to offer it that openly, but right now it is only for siblings who have lost a sibling.
Okay.
We have sometimes people who will say, my child's struggling because their grandma died,
Right.
and I would absolutely love to be able to fund that at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, we're only sibling focused, and actually, it's very uncommon to see a sibling only focused organization. There's not
Yeah.
there's not many out there.
Gotcha. And that, I guess that's 18 and under, or what do you
Yeah.
classify? Okay.
Yep. I mean, a lot of this therapists, I actually vetted all the therapists. I had talks with them, and I wanted to make sure that they specialized with working with children as well as grief. Some friends of ours, Jackson's friend, was having a very hard time with Jackson's death. He was very angry. And so they took him to their family therapist, and the family therapist wanted to have him committed. And he was 7 years old.
Oh my gosh.
So to me, that's a problem,
Yeah.
because I don't believe that's the best solution. But again, when you have therapists that really don't specialize in that, um, sometimes those things happen. So that's
Yeah.
why I specifically sought out therapists who specialize in grief as well as working with children.
Right.
Wow. So committed, like to a insane asylum or some sort of
Yeah,
mental
like
mental ward
yeah.
at 7.
Yeah. So that was another thing that really kind of lit my fire with this, because I'm like, that's frightening to me. But I mean, what else are people supposed to do? They want to help their child. you want to help, because it's terrible. It's terrible to see a child in pain like this. And as parents, we want to fix it. And when you can't fix it, it's tough. It is
Yeah.
tough.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think too, especially as a parent, I've seen things where it says like you can't take care of your family unless you take care of yourself first. So
Yeah.
if you were going through that type of grief and you're trying to deal with it on your own, I can't imagine trying to help your child at the same time.
It is an impossible balance.
Yeah.
It's impossible. Because I miss Jackson so much. I mean, he's, I was volunteering in his classroom. We volunteered in the nursery together at church. And to have two children and then to all of a sudden only have one child, like, what am I supposed to do with all that, like, love and energy? And that's kind of what I do, is put my love and energy into the foundation. And you know it doesn't change it doesn't take it away, but it does help. It helps my heart, and it gets
Mhm.
me out of my head, because it's very easy to go down the path of not you know
Oh yeah.
not loving life,
Right.
Yeah.
because we're
Mike and
not
I
supposed
both
to live without our children.
no, and I can't ever imagine that. But same thing you just said. Mike obviously started this foundation after his mom passed, but his other sibling kind of went down a bad road, and I have the same story. I mean, I didn't start a foundation, but this is my way of living out my mom's legacy is by helping others, whereas my brother didn't choose that path. So
Right.
I think that's a very easy thing to do. You either choose the high road or you go down another one that's not always the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Our society doesn't know how to deal with death.
Nope.
We're not very good at grief.
Nope.
Well, yours is definitely unique in such a short period of time. I just, man, I just can't even fathom that. So,
It's
so how
worse
do
than
you?
you can fathom.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
again, I
Yeah.
I got the picture in my head right now of my three kids, and I just can't wrap my head around something like that.
Yeah.
But you've taken it to the positive, obviously. So, Love Like Jackson, is it lovelikejackson.org?
Yes.
And how do you raise money? I mean, one of the things we talked about today is raising money is so difficult, convincing people of the mission and of the cause.
Yeah.
So, do you have a couple events a year, or what is it you do?
I'm still, again, during COVID, it's definitely complicated all that. I last year I ended up doing an online fundraiser, and I had seen somebody else do something similar to this. And so what we decided to do was we asked people to donate $8 and share it with 7 people. And the reason we chose those numbers was because Jackson died when he was 7, and last year he would have been 8. And so at that time, people were struggling financially. And so I'm thinking, well, if I give people the opportunity to give just a little bit, but then share it with other people, that was also a way to share about the story. And if people could donate more, they absolutely could. And we raised $8,000 in a week, just doing a Facebook fundraiser. And we had only been in existence for a couple months, and so that was pretty great. I do I've been doing people do Facebook like birthday fundraisers. That's been a great way for us to
Yeah.
get money in. I'm super excited. We actually just got awarded $12,000 from a local agency, which absolutely will change things for us right now, because
Yeah.
I've been sort of in this in between, like, I need to make more money, but I want to offer it to more kids. But if a whole bunch of kids come, I don't know how I'm going to be able to pay for it. And I certainly wouldn't want to turn anybody away.
Yeah.
That's the exact problem we have had. If we've got the money to advertise, but if we advertise, we create a situation where we have more people needing help than we have
Right.
people that will make a donation. So there's a
Right.
balance there. You got to try and figure that out. It's tough
Yeah.
because you don't
Yeah.
want to turn anybody away.
But what you just said too, we also talked about earlier. You got $12,000, and that is a huge dent to you, whereas other organizations wouldn't even bat an eye.
No.
Right. Right.
So
Every little bit helps, I mean,
Yep.
because the population of people that I'm working with is kind of a niche group, it's just siblings. So, am I going to help 100 kids a year? not at this point. You know, it
Right.
would be my
You
goal. I
will.
would love, I will, I
Yeah,
certainly
you
will.
will.
And
You will.
I would love to be able to do this, like, you know, across the United States, and like have these organizations in different areas where I could specifically find you know, children's therapists that work with grief. Because right now it's really only St. Louis, but once I get, you know, learning about grants and different things like that, because what we're doing is mental health related, and I think that the pandemic has really reminded people of the difficulties that people have with mental health. And you know, I feel like that's sort of a stigma that is kind of trying to be broken, because I say you wouldn't walk around with a broken arm.
Right.
You know, why do we think it's okay to walk around with our emotions and our brain, you know, not properly functioning if there's help available? I mean, as a social worker, I'm like, I'm all about all the resources. Let's find it, let's help it, let's make it better, because you can, you know.
Yep.
And I feel like I'm a testament to um having hope, you know, that this is a hope, this can feel like a hopeless situation, but
Mhm.
you know, with help, when you realize you don't have to do it alone, reach out to people. You know, we've been blessed and loved on in unimaginable ways and with our community, and I we couldn't have done it without them.
Well, that's a pretty
Yeah,
incredible story, I'll tell you.
thank you.
If anybody hears what happened, I'm curious how many people have been in your same shoes. Do you have any statistics on how many kids that have passed? You may have mentioned it earlier, but I didn't pick it up on how many. I know it's a rare cancer, but 9 days, I think, is what you said.
6 days.
6 days.
6 days.
Yeah.
Is there statistics on how many parents deal with this annually, or do you have any idea?
I don't have any off the top of my head. I know that they say 1 out of 5 children does not survive cancer if they're diagnosed. So that's not great statistics. You know, they say a child is diagnosed with cancer every 2 minutes worldwide,
Yeah.
and so that's a lot. You
Yeah.
know,
To be
so
rare.
yeah. And, you know, we don't realize sometimes how fortunate we are in the United States, because there's so many advancements in medicine. Like if you were in another country, you probably wouldn't survive, because it's just the statistics are not great for osteosarcoma.
Well, they
Like
probably
if,
wouldn't have even known what it is. They would have just died from something, and they wouldn't have known why.
and to be honest, it's surprising that Jackson did not break his leg. That's a lot of times how people find it. They break their leg, they get the X-ray, and then they see it in the X-ray. But
Yeah.
miraculously, he did not break his leg. The thought of the amount of pain he was in is very
That's
upsetting
We've
to me.
I was
You
gonna
gonna
say
say the same thing?
well probably. We actually helped a kid, I think last year. He
Yeah.
was playing football.
Broke his leg.
Like 17 years old, and they just thought it was a football injury, and went and did the x-rays and ended up being osteosarcoma.
Yeah, we think alike. It popped in my head right when you
Yeah.
said that, but that's exactly what happened. He broke his leg,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Oh, I went through all the scenarios. I'm like, well, maybe I should have just made him do taekwondo, and then he would have broken his leg, and then we would have found it. I've done all the things. I mean,
well,
but it doesn't change anything.
No.
Because honestly, sadly, I don't think he would have survived regardless. And that sucks.
well,
But
yeah.
the outcomes just are not good.
I'm no psychologist. We told that at the beginning, and I'm no therapist. But I think any therapist will tell you you could beat yourself up over scenarios that none of them in a perfect world would have happened. You're just trying to figure out why in the world it happened. So
It's
um,
very hard to just be like,
it just
accept
happened.
that it just
Yeah,
happens. You know,
absolutely.
like we want a reason, we want to blame somebody, we want it to be somebody's fault. And
Yeah.
with childhood cancer, this is not, it's not, you know. So I'll always be working on trying to have some acceptance, but in some ways I have accepted it, because I've taken something terrible and turned it into something livable, I guess.
That's usually the people that make the difference, or the ones that are really passionate about it. And your
Yeah.
passion is driven by grief, and that's pretty powerful. So,
Yes, thank you.
well, Carrie, thanks for sharing your story. Hopefully, we'll meet
Yes.
someday. Is there
Yeah,
any
I
way
hope
we
so.
can any way we can cross paths and use our networks to raise money for multiple organizations, we're all in. We've
Awesome.
envisioned something around the U.S. that everybody would participate in, so that would be kind of cool. So
That'd be wonderful.
yeah, we got some ideas, and I may toss them at you one day. But
Yeah.
thanks for being on the show, and it's
Thank you for having me.
Love Like Jackson. If you want to look up the website and really delve into the story that she just told, it's horrible. So thanks so
Yes.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We always wrap it up with Kelly telling how we can help Shirley's Way, how people can help. Are we getting close to our goal this year?
I think we're close. I don't know if we're going to hit it or not, but whenever this airs, probably in a few weeks from now, we'll be, I guess, in December, which is insane. But 2021, we were shooting for $1,010 monthly donors. And we've had several small businesses step up and donate $100 a month, so we're grateful for that. But if you're looking for a charity to support or make an end-of-the-year donation, you can go to shirleysway.org. Or if you want to try some of our raffles, like I said in a previous episode, queenofheartslive.org, jokerswildlive.org, and wheelofcashlive.org. Those are all $2 raffles. You can buy those online from the comfort of your home. And you're not only helping us, but a chance for you to win something as well.
And you get to watch me and Kelly make fun of each other on the Queen of Hearts raffles every Monday night.
No
So.
kidding. But,
All right. Well, thanks so much, and we'll see you all next episode.
yeah, see ya.